In The Social Network, the fictional Sean Parker famously said he was sniffing some cocaine from a young lady's chest, and he said, first we lived in villages, then we lived in cities, now we live online. Now we live on the internet. And on the internet today, as we live on it, there's a new daily newspaper, the Daily Dot. And today we have the co-founder and editor of the Daily Dot, Nick White. Nick, welcome to TechCrunch TV.
Thank you very much.
So, did you found Daily Dot, Nick, because we are actually living on the internet now? All you cover is news on the internet. Is that fair?
That is correct. Chicago has the Chicago Tribune, New York has the New York Times, France has Le Monde, the internet has the Daily Dot.
And your thinking behind it was that we're actually, rather than living in Chicago or New York or London, we're actually living on the internet?
Increasingly, where we participate as citizens is online. Political and social engagement happens online. People run businesses online. Mom and pops are starting now online. They're not starting on Main Street anymore. And so it seemed like a logical step to then say, well, we need to cover it the way a hometown newspaper covered Main Street.
When was the Daily Dot founded?
We launched in August of 2011.
So a little over last year.
Yeah, August last year.
And were you funded or self-funded?
We were kind of angel funded by friends and family.
How much?
At this point, it stands at, we have about $3 million committed.
$3 million.
Mm-hmm.
And do you have reporters on the internet?
We do. We have a staff of, I should have this number at my fingertips, but it keeps changing. We have a staff of, I think, 15, 16 full and part-time reporters and editors.
And then what about a technical staff?
We also have a staff of developers and designers of about 4 or 5 right now.
And where are you based?
We're based on the internet, so naturally.
Do you have an office there?
We are actually currently between offices. Our world headquarters is in Austin, Texas, but we have people in everywhere from New York to San Francisco to Vancouver to Paris to Syracuse, New York, actually. We have a relatively large contingent. I'm not sure how that happened.
And how are you doing on the audience front at the moment?
Well, we reached over 1 million uniques a month in a little over 11 months, so we felt very good about that.
Was that a target? Was that what you were looking at?
We wanted to get to 1 million in less than a year, and so we did.
And those 1 million uniques are returning?
A fairly large chunk of them are returning. That's total reach over the period of a month. But we have a returning audience of over 100,000.
And the business model is advertising because the product is free, right?
Yes.
What have you learned, Nick, from these 11 months? I know your background is in traditional journalism. What have you learned about actually developing a newspaper for the web, both a paper about the web and on the web itself?
I've learned that journalism works. Part of the impetus for me to do this was that I do come from traditional media. I worked in a newspaper. My family, going back generations, all newspaper journalists. And there's a terror among the traditional journalists that journalism is dead, that the internet is going to kill journalism. And what I've learned is that journalism, the act of reporting and writing, of finding insight and context and facts and putting those in front of readers, is alive and well. It is not just needed by society, but is wanted by consumers.
And what are you doing that newspapers aren't doing? Why are they so pessimistic and why are you so optimistic?
Well, I think that there's a couple of different things. On the one hand, we are covering things that are relevant to the user, to the reader. And I think that in some cases, a lot of newspapers have gotten, they've been complacent. They're monopolies. They don't have to necessarily be that in touch with their readers. That's something we strive to do every day, and that we could always get better at, and we will keep working on, but that is really the cornerstone of what we do. And beyond that, I think that there's a little bit of a, the traditional publishers make a mistake. They think that the problem is the journalism, when really the problem is the business model. And that what we need in innovation, certainly there's innovation to be done in journalism, but the business of journalism needs far more innovation than journalism itself.
Your readers, how would you identify them? I'm looking at the Daily Dot now. One of the stories is about 7 regular people with famous Twitter handles. Many of your stories are about Facebook issues, Twitter issues, social media issues. Other people who are reading the Daily Dot, are they also reading the New York Times or the Guardian online, or are they seeing the internet as the world?
Actually, it's both. And it depends on, we serve, as a mass market publication, we serve multiple audiences. The short answer is they are reading the New York Times. When we did an audience study, our first audience study actually, the #1 publication that people read other than our own was the New Yorker. So we're talking about, I think the profile of a person who is highly engaged in their society is transferable. I think that if you're highly engaged in the real world, you're also going to be highly engaged in the online world.
How do you make editorial decisions? You're the editor. It seems to me from following the Daily Dot, and I find it an interesting publication, that there is a lot of trivia in it. At the moment I'm looking at it, there's this thing at the top, YouTube guide, cheating in middle school, and then at the bottom, lost out of sight, is some interesting stuff about social media in the Middle East. How are you guaranteeing that you don't degenerate into trivia?
That is something that we think about a lot and we get asked a lot. And
so it's a relevant question.
I think it's absolutely a relevant question. It's an excellent question. I think it's a question we need to constantly answer. But I think the fundament of it is that our mission, I'm reminded of Lincoln Steffens when he became editor of a newspaper in 1895, said, "I wanted writers who would see and make others see the life of the city." And I think at the very core of it, our job is to tell the story of the internet, tell the story of the people on the internet, really. And if we're going to do that, then that runs the gamut. That runs from people sticking Mentos in a Coke bottle to coming up with new theories of how democracy can adapt and be made better by the internet. And I think it goes from the sacred to the profane. And in a lot of ways, that's the glory of the internet.
Do you have competition? I mean, do you see something like the Huffington Post as competition?
We think that, in our view, there's a lot of, the mainstream media is now devoting a corner to the internet. There's
more than a corner. It's a big corner.
It's getting to be a much bigger corner than it was a year ago when we launched. But they cover the very biggest stories. The New York Times has a couple of beat reporters sort of assigned to the internet beat who do a very nice job, of course. But that's only a part of what they do. So the BuzzFeeds and the Huffington Posts of the world are online. They're aggressively online the way we are, but they don't focus just on online news the way that we do. And we think that we bring to it we call ourselves a newspaper, and that's because we view a newspaper as being about a kind of product orientation. We try to invest every story that we do, even if it's about trivia, with real reporting. We try to reach out to the creators, to the people that put Mentos in a Coke bottle and ask them, why did you do it? Who are you? We try to tell their stories, and we try to create a context and a depth of information and insight that many of our competitors don't always.
Are you profitable?
Not yet.
When do you expect to be?
We hope to be able to be profitable within the next 6 months. That's what we're working toward.
And what kind of audience do you need to develop in order to become profitable? Is that the key metric?
Really the business model comes down to 3 simple things. How many people do you have in your audience? How long are you keeping them around? How much can you sell every advertising impression?
And using those 3, finally, Nick, where would you like to be in 6 months or a year?
I'd like to see us in 6 months having made the same kind of audience progress that we've made over the last year.
So 2 million uniques?
It would be more than that, actually.
What, 3, 4?
3 or 4 million uniques.
So if I have you back on 6 months and you have 4 million uniques, you'll be happy?
Very.
And advertising in 6 months?
How
long should those people be staying? I mean, is a minute, 5 minutes,
a month? I think that they should be staying. I'd like to see a large chunk of them, at least 15, 20%, coming every week. I'd like to see 50% of them coming more than once a month. I'd like to see us being able to sell those advertising impressions at a CPM that is commensurate with the kind of brand that we're trying to put together and the kind of authoritative news product that we're trying to create.
Well, Nick White, you've put yourself online here. I'll have you back in 6 months, and we'll test the metrics. Thanks so much for appearing on
Excellent.
TechCrunch TV.
I look forward to it.